Hi, today we're going to talk about AI and GPT. And I want to start with a quote from the Yuval Harari's book Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. By the way, great book, highly recommended. In the 21st century, we might witness the creation of a massive new underclass. People who are not just unemployed, but unemployable. They will be unable to learn the skills of the new economy and will occupy the lowest rungs of the social ladder. The technological revolution will leave them behind, creating a new kind of social inequality never seen before. I call this useless class. And I think that this revolution is happening right now. And the trigger is the recent development of artificial intelligence, large models, and GPT in particular. The purpose of this video is to provide a comprehensive overview of how GPT works. This will make the technology less mysterious and enable you to stay up to date with the latest developments. By the end of this video, I'll present some advanced examples of how GPT can be used in everyday life. Similar to most other revolutions, it's not always obvious when you are in the midst of it. I think that the recent breakthroughs in LLMs, short for large language models, can be compared to the advent of electricity and the internet, forever changing the world we live in. GPT is capable of writing code, generating business ideas, teaching, preparing for exams, composing songs in any style, solving scientific problems, and explaining complex concepts in a very easy way. It's possible to feel lost or frightened by the pace of LLM's development, especially if you haven't followed its progress from the beginning. I don't believe that AI will completely replace human workers. Yes, it may result in the loss of certain jobs, but it will simultaneously create new ones. For instance, at Hints, we were looking for a copywriter, but when I discovered GPT, we removed this position. That's one job already. Most of the emails I send and blog posts are generated by GPT. Even the script of this podcast was edited by GPT. I drafted the first version of it with a ton of mistakes and asked GPT to be an editor, to correct my grammar and stylistic mistakes and walk me through the editing process. Basically, it acted as an editor and English tutor, not only correcting the text, but also explaining why it was incorrect in the first place. I use GPT to prepare for client meetings and investor pitches by feeding it a lot of information on hints, as well as the client or investor, and asking it to act as either a client or investor. It asks me questions and I reply to them, then it asks follow-up questions like mock interview. Using GPT saves me hours every week, which I can invest in something more important and be more productive than people who don't use GPT. So GPT became popular about a year ago. Imagine the development difference between people who have been using it for 5 years and those who don't use it. So keeping up with the latest development in AI is crucial if you don't want to be left behind. The current state of LLMs is only beginning. Until recently, the model was contained within what's called the Chinese room. The Chinese room is a thought experiment in philosophy of mind. The experiment imagines a person who doesn't understand Chinese, but is given a set of rules in English to manipulate Chinese characters. The person is then able to respond to questions in Chinese, giving the appearance of understanding the language. However, the person doesn't actually understand the language, but is simply following a set of rules. This experiment is meant to challenge the idea that a computer could truly understand language and have consciousness, even if it can simulate intelligent behavior through the use of algorithms and rules. Basically, it means that GPT isn't an artificial general intelligence, short AGI, but merely mimics it. AGI is a form of AI that can reason, plan, learn, and communicate in a way that's indistinguishable from a human's being cognitive abilities. And I agree that right now GPT is just a Chinese room, but this Chinese room is gaining traction and expanding its capabilities. Recently, OpenAI introduced its plugins, effectively turning GPT into an app store, where every app will empower the model to do certain actions in the real world. For instance, now it's possible to ask the model for a recipe and order all ingredients from Instacart. Soon it will be possible to book Uber or purchase airline tickets. I think that in less than a year, GPT will become the ultimate personal assistant with countless use cases. Our startup Hints is at the forefront of this development. We use GPT's brain and build arms around it by connecting it to your messenger apps and work tools such as Notion, ClickUp, Jira, HubSpot, Trello, Obsidian, Google Calendar, etc. This allows it to interact with software via voice or text commands from your messenger. You can ask it to create or update a task, CRM, contracts, or send meeting summary to your Notion. You don't need to learn specific commands. You can simply type in your Messenger app or say a phrase, and GPT will understand what you need. These use cases are awesome and will save you time and energy. But let's get back to a bigger picture. The ultimate goal of OpenAI is to achieve artificial general intelligence. And we are getting closer every day. I won't be surprised if in 5, maybe 10 years, an LLM such as GPT or maybe one of their competitors may become the governor of California. And no jokes here, I truly believe in it. So what's GPT? How does it work? GPT, or Generative Pre-trained Transformer, is a deep learning model that employs a transformer architecture to generate natural language text. Sounds pretty complicated, but let's break down this definition by words and explain what each one means. What is a deep learning model? It's a type of neural network. But what's a neural network? A neural network is a machine learning model that's inspired by the structure and function of the human brain. To better understand neural learning and deep learning, let's first talk about machine learning in general. Let's start from the beginning. For example, let's use linear function y equals wx plus b. You input x, and it calculates y. For example, let's take some simple weird task. We need to predict the price of an apartment in New York City based on its size. So you input x, which is the size, and it outputs y, which is the price. In school, we are often given the exact function value, such as y equals 3x plus 2. It means we already know w and b, but in reality we often don't know the function. Suppose you have a dataset with apartment sizes and their corresponding prices in New York. You downloaded it from Zillow. Or if you actually live in New York, you download it from StreetEasy. And you want to find the function so you can know the price for any given apartment, even if it's not in the dataset. How you can do this? And why are you going to use machine learning? We don't know what values of w and b in this function, and they need to be calculated by the machine. Moreover, this w and b are not fixed. If we obtain more data on apartments, the w and b will be refined, so the whole function will be refined and will be more accurate. How do we use data to get this w and b, and as a result find a function that can predict the price? You divide your data set into two sets. 80% for training and 20% for testing. To train the model, you use the training set. There are many open libraries that you can use to build this model with a given dataset. You start with random values for w and b, run the data through the function, and check the error between the predicted prices and the actual prices in the training set. The function is then updated to minimize the error. You repeat this process several times until the function makes accurate prediction on the training set. Once the model has been trained, and the model and function here are the same words, you can use the testing set to evaluate its performance on new data. The model can be updated to improve its accuracy with new data. Suppose you obtain additional data on apartment prices, you can use it to retrain the model and refine the values of w and b. Fun fact, you don't need to know Python or any other languages to build a simple model. Ask GPT how to do it, and it will give you step-by-step instruction. So, one more time. You download actual data, feed it to the model trains itself, validates its own accuracy with a test sample. Then you can use it to predict whatever you want to predict. This is machine learning, but it was a simple example with just two parameters. Let's dive into the topic of neural networks, which are a slightly more complex form of machine learning used for more advanced scenarios than the previous one. The name neural comes from the fact that it consists of interconnected neurons or nodes that process information and generate output. Essentially, it operates on the same principle as in the previous example, but with multiple calculations performed simultaneously. Each neuron acts as a basic unit of computation. To illustrate it, consider a simple neural network with two layers, input and output. In the output layer, there is only one neuron. In a neural network, a neuron calculates a weighted sum of the inputs, followed by a non-linear activation function. This may appear complicated, but again, it can be seen as a more advanced version of y equals wb plus m. Suppose you wish to train a neural network to predict the price of a used car based on its mileage, age, and number of previous owners. So mileage, age, and number of previous owners will be the input parameters. During the training process, the weights associated with each input parameter would be learned. Then you must decide which activation function to use. In most cases, there are only 4 activation functions that can be used. Building these neural networks is like playing with Lego blocks. You combine them, check for errors, and adjust until it works correctly. Let's now return to the definition of GPT, which is a deep learning model that uses a transformer architecture. Now, what is deep learning? In the context of deep learning, deep means that a neural network has multiple hidden layers. These layers enable the network to learn more complex representations of input data, which is crucial for handling complicated use cases. The purpose of hidden layers in deep learning is to extract increasingly abstract and complex features from the data by processing inputs through multiple layers of nodes. Each layer learns to extract more abstract and complex features from the data, which becomes the input to the next layer. As a result, the network can learn high-level representations of the data. Now, I'll show you why hidden layers are important by using the TenserFlow playground. It's a great tool to illustrate how neural networks work. The task here is to train a machine learning model to classify dots in a circle as either blue or yellow based on their position. So the input features are the x and y coordinates of each dot, and the target variable is the color of the dot. In simple words, we give it a data set and it trains to find a pattern. Alright, so you can see here, this is an epoch. This is number of time that the training data went through the model. We can see activation function here. There are only 4. And we can see hidden layers, so we can add hidden layers, we can remove them, and neurons here. So let's start with simple data. Alright, so okay, right, so we need to click play here and see how it works. But let's remove, for the beginning, all hidden layers and all neurons. So we click play and you see just immediately testing loss is close to 0, training loss is also it's actually 0. So it was a very simple data set, very simple pattern, so the model recognized it immediately. Now let's change the data set, different pattern, more complicated one. Let's click play, and as you can see, the model can't understand what's going on. Test loss is high, training loss is high, it doesn't change. Okay, but let's try and add, let's add one hidden layer. And let's add one neuron here, and let's see. So very quickly, as you can see, just less than a couple of seconds, test loss is close to 0, training loss is close to 0. So the model recognized the pattern very quickly by just adding one hidden layer. Now let's use the most complicated data set here, the spiral one. And let's try again with the same setting. As you can see, one hidden layer isn't enough with 3 neurons, but let's add 4 hidden layers with 5 neurons in each one. And let's change our activation function. Let's use this one. Okay, let's see. And something is happening. So it's training and as you can see, it's getting there. So it's getting closer to 0, and it almost recognized the pattern. So as you can see, playing with these hidden layers and neurons, you can change the complexity of the model, and by doing this, you can build a model which can recognize more sophisticated patterns. The more sophisticated your task is, the more sophisticated model you need. For some tasks, you need to add hidden layers. If the neural network has hidden layers, the process to train it is called deep learning. We're discussing functions, models, and parameters. But what about language? How can we calculate words and phrases using neural networks? It's actually quite simple. We can assign each English word a unique combination of numbers, known as a vector. When we think about vectors in 3 dimensions, it's straightforward. Each dot in this room has just 3 coordinates. We can calculate the distance between any 2 dots in this room using a simple formula. However, we can do the same thing in a 4-dimensional, 10-dimensional, and even 100-dimensional space. Nothing changes. Instead of 3 coordinates, we have 100, but the formula remains the same. If we treat words and phrases as vectors, we can also calculate the distance between them using the same formula. In this case, the distance won't be physical, it will be semantic, so how close are the meaning of these phrases. If we see a word as a vector, we can apply the same neural network models. There are around 170,000 words in English, and an average sentence has 15 words. So the neural network that can understand how they are connected should be very sophisticated. For example, GPT-3 has 175 billion parameters and 192 hidden layers to find patterns in how these vectors are connected. Now, the last piece of the puzzle. What does the word transformer means in the definition of GPT? Traditional old language models suffered from certain limitations, such as difficulty in capturing long-term dependencies in an input phrases. In other words, if you ask the model how AWS servers work and then ask the follow-up question, the model might forget the context and think you're asking about a server in a restaurant. Transformers were designed to address these issues by allowing the model to selectively attend to different parts of the input phrases. So it's a more complicated neural network where neurons interact with each other in a certain way. This allows the model to better capture long-term dependencies and maintain a more complete understanding of the input sentence. We have now covered all the pieces and can see a big picture. Obviously, in every piece, there were so many important details that I missed, and I'm sure there were inaccuracies in my explanation. But the goal was to show that GPT isn't that mysterious, and I hope the whole topic of large language models and neural networks make more sense now. At the end of the day, it's not rocket science. Yes, not too many people can understand all the small details, but it's not necessary unless you build your own AGI or LLM. There are hundreds of open source models available on the market today. When we launched Hints in 2021, we were using different models from Hugging Face. It's a marketplace for AI models, before we switched to GPT in the beginning of 2022. Why is GPT so special? First, it costs a lot of money to train this model. The more layers and parameters a neural network has, the more compute it requires. That's why OpenAI, the developers of GPT, partnered with Microsoft so they can use their servers. But that's not all. The model is trained on data from the internet, from all open sources. And it can be not accurate, it can contain some mistakes. So to avoid these major mistakes, you need to evaluate the neural network. Researchers build the reward model that provides feedback on how well the model is doing at the task at hand. OpenAI uses RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback, which involves training a reward model directly from human feedback. This approach involves presenting generated text to people who provide feedback on the quality of the text. The reward model then uses this feedback to adjust the language model and effectively learning from human corrections. While RLHF has the potential to improve the accuracy and coherence of language models, it's a very expensive process. It requires a large number of human evaluators to provide feedback on generated text. And the process of integrating this feedback into the language model can be time-consuming and extremely expensive. So in short, to build a great broad model or large language model, nowadays you need a lot of money. But for narrow, specific cases, you can still use simple open source models, which, by the way, you can train using GPT. For instance, we use GPT for our open version of Hints, but we also train several smaller models for specific use cases for our B2B clients. Another advantage is that these smaller models can be hosted locally, which addresses a lot of privacy and security issues for enterprise clients. Now, let me show you some great examples of using GPT that I promised at the beginning of this video. I'm going to use Hints for this. Hints was built to control your software on your behalf, but we also added a GPT conversational mode recently. It's the same GPT, but available from your phone on Telegram, WhatsApp, Slack, or SMS. So I'm using our Telegram Hints bot. As I said, pretty much the same tool as GPT. We just added this conversational GPT mode here in our bot, so you can access it on your phone. It's available on Telegram, Slack, SMS, WhatsApp. So let's start with something simple just to show you the idea. I'm going to ask it a question. So, why deep learning is called deep? And let's see. Okay, deep learning is called deep because it involves the use of multiple layers. All right, so if I don't have any hidden layers, then it's not deep learning, right? So basically, you can ask it any question. Yeah, that's correct. And you can continue this conversation asking any other, asking to write you a blog post, or pretty much the limit is your imagination. So I have here some examples of prompts I was going to show you. Yeah, so let's use this one. Prompt is basically a question, and right now I can say it's a new profession, prompt engineering. When you learn this language, how to communicate with large language models, so how to get information from them, how to train them to do specific tasks. So, for instance, here, act as a copywriter, create an email subject title. The email is about new development in LLMs. Yeah, discover the latest involvements in LLM programs and available exciting news. Yep, that's pretty cool. So what else we can do? Let's check this article, for instance, and let's make summarization. We added this summarize function here for URL, so you don't need to copy paste the text, you just send the URL. Okay, nice summary. Now let's just copy this and save. All right, what we can ask? Write a tweet about this. Okay, let's make less information here to make it faster. Okay. Yeah, it's a nice tweet. Now send it to my Notion. And so what I do, I often send URLs to myself when, friends, for instance, send me something interesting to read and I don't have time. I just forward these URLs to the Hints bot. It makes summary for me, and then I send it to my Notion and read it later. So let's open my Notion here. Notion inbox. Yep, breaking news. So here is this tweet. So I don't know what else we can do. For instance, I'll show you just very quickly how our integrations work, and then we'll get back to more interesting prompts with more sophisticated use cases. So, okay, I'll ask it to create a deal in my CRM. Create a new deal, Microsoft, #HubSpot. All right. I use hashtag because I have way too many integrations. So I connected hints to all my software on my computer, and sometimes it makes sense to add hashtag so it knows what tool you mean. So yeah, and here you can see Microsoft. Let's move this deal to, I don't know, let's move it to a different stage, qualified to buy. All right. Move Microsoft to qualified to buy stage. #HubSpot. I think if I don't add HubSpot hashtag, it will still understand me, but I just don't want to risk it right now. Okay, let's update it. Yeah, you see, it moved. Okay, that was a pretty simple example. Now let's do something really interesting. I'll show you that basically you have the same GPT if you go to ChatGPT. So it's the same interface with hints. Advantages that it's open on your phone. You can use it on Telegram, WhatsApp, SMS, Slack, as I said, and we have this nice thing that we integrated with different software tools. So right now, ChatGPT isn't integrated with these productivity tools. Okay, now I want to copy paste personal interview coach. So this is very cool. I ask the bot to interview me, ask questions for the positions detailed in my next message, and I wanted to only reply as the interviewer. I found this this prompt somewhere on YouTube. I'll try to find the source and post this video where I found it in the description of this episode. So, okay, here I prepared some description of some sales position, and I'm going to send it. Okay. And it gives me questions. It's weird that it sends me these questions one by one. Sends these questions in a list when I wanted to send it one by one. Let's just try again. Regenerate response. Yeah, okay, that's better. As a solar sales account manager, we're looking for someone who is passionate. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience in this area? I had a great experience in that areas. That's great to hear. Can you please elaborate? So basically, it's a great way to prepare for an interview. It will go on and on. There are so many different ways how it can check that you are prepared for interview. So what else I can show you? What other prompts I have here? I showed you a copywriter. Okay, yeah. Let's do it one more time. I will show you another example. So here, act as a copywriter, create an email subject line. So the same thing here. How does it sound? It asks me. Now I want you to act as a critic. Criticize this title and convince why it's bad. Let's think step by step. Okay, sure. I'd be happy to provide some feedback. And as you can see, what it does, first it helps you to create something, and then you can add another prompt so it will criticize its own work. And you can repeat this cycle several times. So it will correct the previous work, so you can make it better and better. So again, as you can see, there are so many different scenarios. You can understand some topic better by asking questions again and again. You can prepare yourself for some interview, and this is just beginning. You can open your YouTube and just search for the best GPT prompts, and you will get hundreds of great ideas how you can use GPT. So I think this is it. Our bot, which is connected to GPT and also connected to different bots, to different messaging apps and software tools, is available here at hints.so, where you can just try it for free, decide what messenger app you want to use, and this is it. So I hope it was useful for you, and good luck with understanding how GPT works and using it and saving time and energy in your life. Bye.